Welcome, everyone, to Zoom Into Books this afternoon. We have the founder of ESPN, Bill Rasmussen, with guest interviewer Burke Allen. Bill has a brand new book out, and today's the release date. So we're looking forward to a fun interview. Burke, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special simulcast edition of Zoom Into Books and the Big Time Talker podcast. If you're listening to our podcast, you could be at Spotify, Apple, iTunes, anywhere you download podcasts. We're now at iHeartMedia as well, and you can subscribe to new episodes every Tuesday. So be sure to tell a friend and join us for our Big Time Talker podcast. Zoom Into Books, presented by our friends at Headline Books, and they are one of those incredible publishers that bring terrific stories to light. The Big Time Talker podcast and Zoom Into Books brought to you today by SpeakerMatch.com, the world's largest online virtual speakers bureau. If you are a meeting planner, or maybe you're a platform speaker, well, the thing to do is to find one another at SpeakerMatch.com. And speaking events are back in the post-COVID days, so utilize SpeakerMatch.com and let's all get back together once again. Bill Rasmussen is not only the founder of ESPN, the world's very first 24-hour, 7-day-a-week sports television network. He is, and I may make him blush a little, a legend in entrepreneurial sports, in advertising and broadcasting, recognized by the Sports Business Journal as one of the 100 people who greatly influenced the NFL. Sports Illustrated honored him as one of their 40 for the ages. USA Today calls him the father of cable sports, and he's the author of the brand new book, ESPN One Giant Leap for Fankind. Bill, how's that for an introduction?
Wow. It's a good thing this is in living color up here, because you're no, I really appreciate that, Burke. Thank you very much. It was some of those things that you mentioned as you were going through them, in my mind. I'm thinking back. It's been an interesting road to tread, so to speak.
When you look back on your life, Bill, I mean, you're a kid, born very humbly, South Side of Chicago kid, went on to be in the Air Force. But then things really gradually began to take off for you. I want to peel back the onion to your childhood in the South Side of Chicago. What are your earliest memories growing up there that may or may not be sports related? What do you remember about being a kid there?
Well, I was born in 1932, which was kind of a bad time in the country, as everyone knows, that following the crash in 29 and then the Great Depression. And I remember that my father, first memories I have, my parents were living with my father's mother it was still on South Side of Chicago, just a little closer to downtown. And then I remember a conversation. I had to be, 5 or 6 years old, and my father was telling me that he and his brother. My father was the youngest of 11 children, and the next in line above him was his brother Elmer, and they said they're going to build a house so we could move out to the suburbs.
Okay.
All the way out, that meant out where the prairies were. I mean, literally, the streets were just little trails, and there was one U.S. highway. It was 95th Street to us, but I think it's U.S. 1220 or something. And it was a 2-lane highway. Today it's a super, I think it's 4 lanes in each direction now or something. It goes.
How tough was it, Bill, as a kid in the Great Depression? You mentioned that you were living with your grandparents, so things must have been pretty tight.
Yeah, they were, and they stayed that way actually through through the late 30s. My father had to take care of 3 different jobs. The third job being taking care of his family, but he worked as a milkman before he went to work on the streetcar system. He would be out delivering milk up until 6 o'clock, then get down to whatever he was going to, whatever his assignment was that day today it's the CTA, the rail system in Chicago. The one thing he told us, and this one sticks in my mind to this day, we will get through, and I can remember when he was shaking his finger, he said, we'll get through this, and I'll put food on the table, but I don't want to see any plate with any food on it when we're finished with dinner. So it was almost like a threat, you better, I'll feed you, I'll put the food there, you better eat it all, though, because we didn't. Yeah, it was an interesting time. And then when the Pearl Harbor occurred, of course, we just celebrated that every December since 1941.
Sure.
And the thing that I remember is all of, my father would have been probably, well, he would have been 30 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood. When Pearl Harbor happened, everybody, his friends, they all rushed down. Everybody was going to go in the Army or enlist.
Enlist,
yeah. It was incredible, and the number of people that turned out. And of course, we all know how that went.
You were 9 years old when Pearl Harbor happened. Do you have a clear recollection of where you were when you got the news?
Yep. I was sitting cross-legged, and we heard my father call us in, said something's happening. We sat in front of the radio. That sounds odd today. You sit in front of a TV screen or something. The radio that in those days was literally a piece of furniture. I mean, it was, probably 4 feet high and a regular piece of cabinetry finishing it. And they had these big tubes. I don't know what you call them.
Yeah.
But there was no TV. We didn't have TV at that point. Not just us. Nobody had TV.
Nobody had TV. This was pre-TV.
Yeah, pre-TV. So I can remember and I just, you see it every year, this day that will live in infamy, President Roosevelt saying that, and I actually heard him say those words live.
Bill Rasmussen is our guest today. His brand new book from Headline Books is ESPN One Giant Leap for Fankind, walk through sports history with a man who changed it. Bill is widely known as the founder of ESPN, 24 hours, 7 days a week, sports television, which we'll talk to Bill a little bit about later. I understand he was told that would never work. So you grew up in the South Side of Chicago in the middle of the Great Depression. You go to college and get a degree in economics. And I wonder, as you look back on it now in the rearview mirror, is there a correlation there? Did you take economics in school because young Bill said, I don't ever want to be poor again?
Well, it's really interesting that you asked that. In 1948, I graduated in 1950. But in 1948, there was a contest, I guess you would call it, by the Chicago Sun-Times, an essay contest. Tell us what it was for all the high schools in Chicago. And we had, at that point, we had 36 high schools in Chicago because we had 4 sports divisions and each had 9 teams. Anyway, I said, that's pretty interesting. And all of the teachers at school say, who can we get to enter this? Well, several people wrote essays and so on, but I had to pick an essay. What would the topic be? So I was talking to my father about it, and he said, well, why don't you become a lawyer? You can go to law school and so on. And if it doesn't work, well, that's okay. There are other ways to do things. So I wrote this essay on becoming a lawyer, and I was one of 6 kids in Chicago selected to attend Harry Truman's inauguration in Washington, D.C. on January 20th, 1949. That was the famous year. The headline that was held up on the Chicago Tribune, Dewey beats Truman.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the case. So off we went to Washington. We got on the train, in the Chicago Sun. We were all over the Chicago Sun-Times. I had no idea what all that meant, but off we went. So that kind of gave me a little flavor. We get on the train. First people we met were Forrest Tucker. Now there's a name that you probably have never heard of. He was a big Western star in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And Phil Harris and Alice Faye were big couple. He was a band leader, and we just had a great time. And then when we got to Washington, we met the Sun Times had us everywhere, and we had a photographer with us in this. So I think my dreams of being a lawyer were dashed along in there. I thought, this is pretty cool. We're meeting a lot of people. I wonder how that works.
Sure.
But I had an interest in baseball and sports in general, but baseball in particular prior to that. And I don't know, just one of those things. It changed from being a lawyer. A lawyer won the contest, got me a trip to Washington, but never looked back and never really thought about going to law school.
Bill, you were a veteran as well. You served in the Air Force. Tell me a little bit about your time in the service, because you came in after World War II. Were you there during the Korean conflict?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the day we graduated was the day the North Koreans invaded the South.
Oh, man.
So there had been rumblings, and everybody had to register for the draft because of World War II. When that started, when you turned 18, you registered. And so we were all registered for the draft. And really kind of interesting. We graduated. Some of us had been invited to play for a minor league baseball team in Iowa. I don't know, it must have been a class triple D or some such thing. Because we weren't that good. But anyway, it was fun to be invited. But the day we graduated and the war and the North Koreans started, it became apparent that if you didn't have a college deferment, you were going to go to Korea. You were going on active duty instantly.
That was the plan. You had no choice. Here's what's going to happen to you.
That's right. This is it. And I remember our first baseman said, I'm going to play ball anyway. We had all said, we're going to college. Fine. That was June 25th. He was drafted within days, literally.
Oh, see ya.
He had no deferment. He was to Japan to Korea and back by the end of the summer. I couldn't believe, nobody could believe apparently there was not very much training went into, they were trained, I guess, talked to or spoken with or sat in meetings on the ship on the way over. But anyway, he was wounded in our final game in that summer season before we all went off to college, those with deferments. Played at the Lions, I think it was the Lions U.S. Veterans Hospital in Chicago, suburbs of Chicago. And our first baseman of June was sitting in a wheelchair suffering from the wounds that he had incurred in Japan. That was tough.
That's going to be, really difficult, because you're a young guy at this point. You're barely a man.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys around you. Yeah, and the guys around you, not only are you seeing people of your father's generation who come back after World War II, but now it's your peers, and they're coming back. What is that? What goes through your mind when you see that?
Oh, that was devastating. We couldn't believe it. He survived, recovered, and I saw him. I went back for, I think it was like the 47th anniversary of our graduation or something in 1997, or I don't know, somewhere there. And he did fine, but he still thought he should have gone to college instead of Korea, looking back on it. But it was, we were all 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. It really struck home.
Bill Rasmussen is our guest today. He's written a new book called ESPN, One Giant Leap for Fankind. He's the founder of ESPN. He's done a lot of other really interesting things in his life. So you get this degree in economics, then you get your MBA from Rutgers, and then you do something that I'm sure your father must have given you the side eye on. You got this economics degree, you have an MBA, and you say, I think I'm going to get into the sports broadcasting business.
Yeah, well.
Did he think you were nuts?
Yeah.
Did your parents want to have your head examined?
Yeah, basically that was the case. But he was a supporter everywhere when I played and so on. But he had some different rules than we hear of today. For example, he would say to my two brothers and my sister on occasion, "We're going to the ball game today." Whether they wanted to or not, they were going to the ball game. And then one day I must have had a pretty good day, and we stopped. There was little soft ice cream stand, I guess you would call it, on the way home, going back to where we lived on the south side. And we stopped one day and we all had the ice cream. It was great and so on. And the next week we were getting ready to go in, and he came up with an idea. He said, if Bill doesn't get a hit today, we're not stopping for ice cream.
Oh man.
Oh my. Talk
the
about
pressure's
pressure.
on.
The pressure was really on. The very first day he said that, I did an offer. I didn't get any hits. My two brothers and sister wanted to throttle me, I think.
No soft serve for you people.
No soft ice cream today. And the intriguing thing is, my father could have driven a route that we wouldn't have seen that. We could have go, different highway going back home. But he drove right past it.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's groaning, oh.
Rubbed it in a little.
Nope, no hits, no ice cream. Wow, pressure was on the rest of the season.
That's tough. So when you get your first broadcasting job, TV has come along, I guess, by that point, early TV. But your first job was radio play-by-play announcer. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
What station and what town?
WTTT AM in Amherst, Massachusetts.
Starting right at the top there, WTTT in Amherst.
Oh yeah. Well, it was a daytimer. Remember when we had those daytimer radio stations?
Oh yeah, sign off after dark. Yeah.
Yeah, sign off. There's some formal way they read the tea leaves, and you have to be off at 4:13 on this day. And as it gets deeper into the winter, you're only on the air. It seems like 10 minutes a day, but it was actually one.
It makes it a little tough to do play-by-play for Friday Night Lights when the station is off the air.
Yeah, you can't do that. Actually, I did basketball for the station in neighboring Northampton because they were a full-time station. And the two station managers worked together. Obviously, if you're a daytimer, you can't do basketball anyway. So
right,
we're playing at night. But it was interesting. I never had any formal training, and big admission here, but I think I do mention it. I know I mentioned it in the book. I made this decision up here in my mind. I was going to go do this. Hadn't told too many people about it, but I was subscribing at that time. There was Broadcasting Magazine. Remember that?
Oh, sure.
That goes way back, and they'd have these little 2-line position available, such and such, or jobs section or whatever.
Classifieds. Yes.
Yeah. So I saw this little 2-liner and said, Westerly, Rhode Island station, whatever it was, looking for a sportscaster. That's what they said, not play-by-play, sportscaster. So I said, okay, now I'm living in Clifton, New Jersey, and this is Westerly, Rhode Island. And I said to my wife at breakfast, I'm going to drive up there and interview for this job. When I went in to talk to the guy, come on in, Bill, everybody. He said, did you bring your tape? I said, nope. What do you mean you didn't bring your tape? I don't have a tape. He said, well, what station do you work for? I said, I've never worked in radio. And you're applying, you think you can do play-by-play for my new station? I said, I sure can. He said, he kind of shook his head and he said, this is the strangest interview I've ever had for a broadcasting job. You haven't done any broadcasting. He said, I'll tell you what, we're just putting the station on the air. If you'll go up there a couple of months early and help us through all the FCC things and hoops to jump through, you'll be my sportscaster. 7:45 in the morning, and whatever it was, the last 4 minutes or 5 minutes before we signed off and at the end of the day. So when I got up there, most interesting thing probably is when I said to my wife that night, we're going to move to Amherst, Massachusetts. She said, we're going to what? At that point, we had 2 young boys and a brand new baby girl.
This is a tough sell, isn't it?
This was not the ideal topic for discussion over the dinner table, but we got through it. We got up there. It turned out she loved it just as much as we did. It was really great. So we went on the air April 1st, 1963, my first paid for. I think maybe I was making $65 a week or something at that point.
Oh, my.
but that's okay. We got through it. And we were talking with the station manager, the owner, and he said, anything else we can do? And I said, yeah, well, let's talk about football. University of Massachusetts is right here. UMass was a member of the Yankee Conference, and the 6 New England states they were not a football powerhouse conference. It was not the SEC, believe me, or the Big 10 or 12. So I went up and introduced myself, the athletic director, call for an appointment. Nice guy. I played in the Sugar Bowl in 1939. I saw that on his desk. And he said, what do you want to do? Why are we getting together? He said, I'm happy to meet you, but I don't understand. I said, well, we want to broadcast your games. He said, you do? Why?
Why?
Yeah. He actually said the words, why? Nobody will listen. He said, that's just, who are we? I mean, that's the way this is hard to believe when in this day and age of,
how much things have changed.
Yeah. But anyway, he said, okay. I said, anything else? I said, well, and I'm thinking to myself, what else? How about basketball? I've forgotten for the moment that we're not in the area. So,
be a little difficult to carry, but if you can sell it, you can sell it.
We'll figure something out. So he said, sure, go ahead. That was it. Whole negotiation. No, nothing signed. We just started doing it. He assigned the sports information director to be my color man because I didn't think about that when we went in. We didn't have any color man. There wasn't anybody going to travel with us.
Sure.
So our first game was in Orono, Maine in September of 1963. We're driving to Maine and I'm saying to myself, I wonder if I should tell Dick Page, the SID, who's going to be my color man. I wonder if I should tell him I've never broadcast a football game before.
So at this point, the guy who's riding shotgun with you has no idea that you have no idea what you're doing.
No, I'm the radio guy. As far as he's concerned, I'm the radio guy. I must know everything about it. But I also didn't tell him I'd never even seen a college football game up to that point. So we're riding from Amherst to Orono, Maine, and along the way, I slowly getting closer to game time and getting closer to getting up there. Finally tell him all of these things, and he is stunned. I said, well, we'll work it together and we'll just talk about the football game. And it worked out fine. People back in Massachusetts were, wow, really excited. And that's the way it started. That was the first broadcast I ever did, play-by-play, Massachusetts at Maine.
Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN, walking back through his life and his connection with sports history, guy who changed it all. The new book is ESPN, One Giant Leap for Fankind. It's available now from Headline Books, and what a great gift to give during the holiday season. So that's a pretty humble beginning. I have heard tape from the 60s and before that, the 30s and 40s and 50s of play-by-play. What I haven't heard from back then is sports talk. Was that even a thing? Was there sports talk? Did that exist?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, that was one of the side benefits of the satellite that RCA launched in 1975. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how to describe it, but as I understand it, if you were looking at it as if it was a 33 1/3 record, TV is in certain bands, and on the outer edges there you can do some radio, some audio, because there are more than just one, I guess you'd say, channel for just TV and so on the satellite. It can do a lot of things.
Right.
So as a matter of fact, my son Scott started something in 1980 called Enterprise Radio, and hired some sports talk guys from Philadelphia, New York, and so on, and launched it. It was going to be what you're doing right now, sports
podcast.
Talk. Yeah. It wasn't going to be a pod. We hadn't even heard the word podcast until last week, I guess. But no,
but a talk show that talk about sports.
Yeah, just to talk about sports, and they got some guys really interested. It was going well. But unfortunately, that met the fate that we thought, that everybody else told us ESPN was going to meet. who's going to listen to some guy sitting in a microphone talking about sports for 3 or 4 hours a day? That just is the silliest idea, you know. And so that company actually survived for about a year and a half, but there were no advertising sales. Nobody believed in it at that time. And now today there must be 50,000 sports guys doing things.
When you're right, and it's amazing, and I'm sure having the front row seat on this to watch it all explode must be mind blowing for you. When you did that first football game in Amherst in '63, was this a revenue generating idea? Is that how you sold it to your boss? Hey, if I broadcast this football game, we can make some advertising dollars there. Was that the sell for you to get to do it?
That was the sell, but they didn't sell any. So that didn't work early on. So he suggested that maybe I was not the right guy after all. Why didn't I do the network on my own on the weekends? Well, it turned out that I worked in the advertising department at Westinghouse, and the vice president and I got to know each other. And he said, yeah, well, we'll see what, who knows? Anyway, it turns out he's working for S&H Green Stamps. I don't know if everybody remembers that. That was a coupons, stick them in.
The stickers, yeah. You take the booklet in and you get your Christmas gifts.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. So he said, I guess we can advertise. I mean, we have to advertise. So since he and I were friends, he carved out a little bit of a getting by budget, not very much money. And then I discovered I had a neighbor. I mean, I had no idea. He worked for some company, some beer company in New York. I don't know. And he said, oh yeah, Peel's Beer. He said, Bert and Harry were two animated characters, and Peel's Beer was it? He said, sure, we'll advertise. So now I had a beer sponsor. I don't know if I was legal in those days, but we had a beer sponsor in 1964. And we had S&H Green Stamp, and then we sold some local advertising right in and around Amherst, the shoe store, one of the shoe stores in town, one of the contractors who worked at building things on the university campus. And you just kept asking, keep asking questions. As a matter of fact, when I speak at colleges, especially with colleges and universities, I tell the kids, you can just keep asking questions until somebody says yes. All the no's in the world don't make any difference. You might have 1,000 no's or 100 no's or 10 no's. You only need one yes to be moving on down the road. So I kind of followed that. I just kept talking to people about advertising all the way up through Getty Oil, all of them. So.
Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN, is our guest today on the Big Time Talker podcast and Zoom into Books. The brand new book is available. It's One Giant Leap for Fankind. I've got a copy of it right here in my hot little hands, signed by Bill. And you can get it online now at Amazon.com or ask for it at bookstores. I want to ask Bill about you from a psychological standpoint, because you talked about you're told no over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, something fires off in the synapses of your brain, and you say to yourself, I've been a radio announcer in sports. I've been a TV announcer, play-by-play guy. I've done some baseball. I've done some football. I've done some basketball. I've done some hockey. But I think there's an opportunity to do a TV network that does sports around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you start to sell this, try to sell this idea to people, and pretty much universally, they're told, you're out of your mind, Bill. This is never going to work, Bill. Was there a time psychologically where you thought, maybe they're right. Maybe there's no shot at this. Maybe this is not going to work.
Well, I guess the closest I can say I came to that was when Getty Oil, who had finally said they would talk to us, said we're going to go ahead with this, provided the people who brought them, the financial group that brought us to Getty Oil, would do this, this, and this, and they would forego all the expenses. Getty was a hard bargain to drive. There was something else. And I remember the fellow's name was J.B. Doherty, the investment representative that was working with us by that time.
Okay.
And he and I were walking. We were in Los Angeles, had met with Getty, went out and had dinner, and it must have been probably 11 o'clock at night by the time. He looked at me and I looked at him, and he said, I don't know if they're going to do this. And if they don't do it, we're done. Meaning his advisory position, taking
Sure.
all these people. And I said, he's going to do it. He said, how do you know that? I said, he's just going to do it. So he said, okay. Next morning, he said, this is like, by that time we've had this and we're walking at midnight. I don't know what time it was. Next morning, we got a call and Getty did it. He said, how'd you know that? I said, because the guy we were talking to, it was evident he had an ego. And he said 24-hour sports. He was a sports fan. And he really liked the Hollywood atmosphere and what happened out in Los Angeles. He
The
told us
showbiz
about
of it all. Yeah.
showbiz. Yeah, he told us about John Forsythe, and he were such buddies that, you know, the all of the actors there. So JB said to me, well, I guess you were right. We're going to do it. And then came the hammer about how many, what kind of percentage they wanted the company to do it, which was ridiculous, but that's okay. But he said the next morning, he said, we'll give you $20 million to start. And here's what we wanted. Let's go. That was a pretty good moment to hear. Somebody says, back then, $20 million today might not start a network, but back then it helped. As a matter of fact, that's a question I get all the time. How did you finance this thing? And I took a credit card cash advance for the incidentals, just getting started. And it's easy to say, and this always, I just hope somebody asks me that every time I go and I say, that was the easiest thing of all. Took a $9,000 credit card cash advance, $40 million from Getty Oil, voila, instant network. And when you think about it that way, because Getty said, how many trucks do you need? How many remote trucks? Well, I don't know, how's 7 sound? I mean, it was like that. It was like, how many do you want 2 hamburgers or whatever? And but never, I can honestly say, I mean, I was tired. I'd get frustrated, but I just knew it was going to work. And the reaction from the cable industry was ridiculous. I don't know. Today, the fees are outrageous if you're still paying for basic cable. But back then, Ted Turner had already put his WTBS in Atlanta on a common carrier, so that if he repeated his broadcasting, and he created the superstation, but he couldn't make any change. It had to be whatever was delivered out of Atlanta, and that was fine. But there were nobody else was doing anything. And he was charging 10 cents a month per subscriber. So I said, well, 10 cents, that's probably not going to do it. We're going to have a penny a day. We're going to be 30 cents a month. When I talk to the cable industry, they just, you can leave right now. There's no way anybody's ever going to pay for an all sports network a penny a day.
Sure.
When they passed the 100 millionth subscriber, and their prices were at $8 and $9 per month, I thought back to that. Nobody's going to buy it. But the one example that I always use and talk about when I'm speaking anywhere is I went to Denver, Colorado. There were 4 or 5 or 6 corporate headquarters for the big cable systems of the day. And I walked into one, and there was a young man and a young woman who were going to attend the meeting. Gene O'Grady and Tom Johnson. I'll never forget their names.
Okay.
And they laughed. They laughed when I walked in. They really laughed. They said, we weren't sure you were going to come because, this is never going to work. And they said, how do you think anybody, first of all, you're not going to find enough sports to play.
Of course not.
Not a way. And who's going to listen to sports at 2 a.m? Nobody's going to be awake listening to your things. And during the day, are you kidding me? Nobody's going to beat ABC and whatever show they had and NBC. And I said, well, we think we can. And they laughed again. Many years later, I crossed paths with them.
Right.
And we all laughed then. Shows you how smart we were. We thought we were the really smart people in the business. And now today, by the way, on that bowl games thing, you can look on the ESPN schedule for this current bowl season.
Right.
ESPN is doing 43 bowl games. They invent bowl games just so ESPN can do them. And ESPN underwrites many of them and owns the game themselves. But it worked. That's all I can say. It worked.
Bill Rasmussen is our guest today. The book is ESPN: One Giant Leap for Fankind, a walk through sports history with the man who changed it. He's the founder of ESPN. If you're watching us online now for Zoom into Books, the folks back at Headline Books have put together a presentation of some photos from your career. And we're going to put those up on the screen. And for folks who are watching, I want to see if you can describe, what are we looking at there with those three handsome guys in their 1970s garb and the hard hats?
Well, that's me in the middle and my two sons on either side. And that's the uplink that was in front of the first building, broadcast building. We had one building to start with and two satellite dishes. And from that satellite dish, we would send the signal to the RCA SATCOM 1. Transponder 7 was ours. And in a fifth of a second or 2/5 of a second, we would send a picture from there, 22,300 miles, to the satellite over the equator just south of Hawaii. And it would come back in a fifth of a second later.
These photos are all in the book, by the way. If you pick up a copy of One Giant Leap for Fankind, they're all in there. What did you settle in Bristol, in Connecticut? Why there?
Well, obviously, by that time I was working with the Hartford Whalers, and they were just down the road a piece, so to speak. And as this idea started to unfold, one of the insurance companies, Aetna Insurance, had a gentleman, had an office in the building where the Whalers were located. And one of their guys said, he was really a sports fan. And he had come up with the idea back in the day of going out and televising an event, a hot air balloon contest, a baseball game, or whatever. And there were only 5 active cable systems in Connecticut at the moment. And his idea was to go and sell each of those 5 systems, whatever his program was for the month or the week. And he would put it on that big old 2.5-inch or 2-inch tape, take these big reels of tape, and he was going to bicycle them. That was the phrase. He'd deliver it to one, they would run it. He'd pick up the tape and deliver it to the next one down the road and so on. It was pretty stodgy idea, but anyway, he had found some office space in United Cable Television office in Plainville, Connecticut, which is right next door to Bristol.
Okay.
And so he said, I'll talk to the general manager. He's a good guy. Maybe we can just get an office out there for you and Scott and me to work from. And that's what he did. And so we ended up in Plainville, Connecticut. And as our idea progressed and we were getting more and more enthusiastic and starting to get serious about things, we told the town council what we had in mind, and we were asking for their approval to put up some satellites. They passed an ordinance prohibiting any satellites of any kind to be installed in Plainville, Connecticut. So all of a sudden our idea was without a home, but right next door is Bristol, and we went over there. They welcomed us, and now Bristol, ESPN is the highest taxpayer in Bristol by, I don't know, I guess it'll take the next 10 or 12 companies before they equal what ESPN pays in taxes. And ESPN has built a lot of parks. They're a great corporate partner in the community. So Plainville lost, Bristol won, and there we were. Now today Bristol's owned around the world
because of ESPN. It's synonymous now with sports, 24/7 sports.
Yep, sure is.
How long were you an ESPN guy?
Till December 31st, 1980, I ended my active time, and then as the parting gift is what they said. Getty signed me as a consultant for 3 years till 1984. But active on the campus and so on was in 1980, the end of 1980.
When you look back on the growth of this thing, and I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, for those of us that haven't been around the sun as many times as you have, ESPN now is one of the great brands in sports and in life overall, not just sports, in life. Everyone knows ESPN globally. Could you have ever in your mind, Bill, visualizing where this thing has gone?
No, I thought it would be big in the U.S., but I had going international and around the globe never even occurred to me. But it should have. And fortunately, they had a lot of smart engineering type technical people who knew what they could do. And they did a America's Cup race from Australia, one of the early years. And that kind of opened the eyes for everybody. And we could do some things around anywhere really that the satellite. So if one satellite didn't cover it, you could always do, as they did an America's Cup race from Australia, a double hop from one satellite to the other. And I know the word double hop. I have no idea how you do that. I mean, I could barely turn on a light switch compared to what those guys know.
That's what engineers are for.
That's exactly. As a matter of fact, just to illustrate that, because nobody could believe this was that fast. And we showed them, we put 2 TV sets in the building that we had. And when everybody came in, they said, how does this work? And we take them in and say, it's going to go 22,300 miles. There's a video I have on the website, espnfounder.com, that illustrates it. And we put these 2 TV sets next to each other. One was the outgoing signal, one the incoming. And it's like, it wasn't even like the 20-second delay or 7-second delay. Is like a fifth of a second. It's out and back, or 2/5 of a second. And it's amazing. And as I say to everybody, I still don't have any idea how pictures fly through the air, much less in color, but they do.
What are we looking at in the pictures on the screen right now?
This is the 40th anniversary. I was invited back and to visit some of the ESPN properties. I went to Charlotte and New York and Los Angeles. And this is in Bristol on our day of, on the actual birthday. It was the 40th anniversary. Chris Berman on the left. Chris and I have been good friends for 40 years. He was a young buck who talked about strange nicknames for ball players and so on. And he went on the air at 1 a.m. and suddenly he had an audience, and he finally started thinking of himself as he was kind of the overnight nanny, as he put it, to make sure that when Dad had to get up to watch something and feed the baby, Chris was there to take care of him. And on the picture on the right-hand side, Mike Tirico was there, Robin Roberts, I had known each other, obviously. She was there. Mike Tirico, who's doing NBC Sunday Night Now, is in the middle left of the picture. George Grand is the white-haired gentleman sitting on the lower right-hand corner of the picture. All good friends, and just amazing. Everybody became members of this. We're going to prove it to the world. People will take up sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
It's good that they view you as sort of the the sports broadcaster emeritus there, and you've continued to have a good relationship.
Yep.
What do they do wrong? What has the ESPN gotten wrong? What's their biggest fail, in your opinion?
Wow, that's a good one. One of the things they didn't do was, when I came to them with another idea, it's on the screen right now about college fans. They didn't jump all over that one, but that was just between us. They tried to do something. I recall it was going to be, they had a big, huge arrangement with Verizon at the beginning of all of this, the phone and going to the phone for scores. And today, I guess you can watch video and everything else. I'm too old for all of that stuff now. But I don't know. It's hard to
Not
say.
a lot, I guess, is maybe the answer, because it's been such a successful enterprise.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's really, I mean, I'm sure they've had failures and they've had, spent some money where they probably would have not preferred to, but it really is. If you look at the ratings day after day, week after week, month after month, the day parts, they're always at the top. They just inundate, America is a sports country.
What are your thoughts, Bill, on this new development within the last year, 18 months of college athletes being overtly compensated? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I get for the kids, it's great. I suppose they're getting the money, but I think it's the line between the pros and the college has been blurred for so long, and I think this just adds to it. But that's I don't really know enough about it, but I see, and you probably know who it is. There was one kid who's already made what was it, 7.1 or 1.7 million dollars on. He didn't even have to get drafted. He's going to have, if he has a financial advisor, he's set for life, and he's probably 18 years old.
Which is just incredible to think about.
Which is incredible, yeah. I think the one that puzzles me is the portal where they put their name in and they're quarterbacking one team 1 week and another, 1 year and another one the next year. But I think a lot of people made a lot of money on college sports without the kids sharing in it. But maybe this is swings it a bit too far. But it's just a thought. I don't know enough.
And it's not that it hasn't been going on for years. Now it's just very overt.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, we've got some pictures on the screen now of you in a suit. Who are you hanging out with? All cleaned up here. You look good, Bill.
Those are the 6 presidents in order, by the way. I was the first, and the next gentleman is Chet Simmons, Bill Grimes, Roger Warner, Steve Bornstein, and George Bodenheimer. And the young lady is Rosa Gotti, who is in her way. She worked at ESPN from almost day one, not quite. The first year in 1979-80, we did the Frozen Four, the hockey version of the basketball Final Four. And it was in Rhode Island, and she was at Brown University, and she was in charge of it all. And we had some early conflict when a bunch of NBC people came to work for ESPN with Chet, along with Chet, who had been the president of NBC Sports.
Right.
And one of the guys went over to Rosa, tiny lady that she is, standing there, and said, you're just going to have to throw some people out of their seats because we need this camera position because we didn't. And she said, no, you don't. And he said, well, I'm from New York. I worked for NBC. We did the New York Rangers, and you're telling me in this little, in Providence, Rhode Island, I can't do this. And she said, you're right. You cannot do it. And so everybody noticed it. Wondered who this lady was who was cracking the whip over these guys. And long story short, she came to work for us shortly after that. We offered her a job. She came and she spent her entire working life at ESPN and has more awards for her outstanding work around the world, doing great things, not only for ESPN, but several charity operations. So pretty interesting lady.
How important, or can you even overstate the importance of football and Monday Night Football to ESPN and to the American experience? I mean, is that to use a sports cliche, was that a game changer that brought just a ton of eyeballs to the network?
Oh yeah. First it was Monday Night Football. When that, when it first started, we had Dandy Don Meredith and Frank Gifford and Howard Cosell. I mean, a whole bunch of different people. And when in 1979, in the summer of 79, I met with Pete Rozelle, the commissioner of the NFL at the time. And because by then I was really revved up. We were going to do this 24-hour. Of course, the NFL is going to be in there. They're going to leap at it.
Right.
Well, Pete was a really real gentleman, and he didn't exactly leap at it either. And I remember when we finished, he was very respectful, listened to everything. And then I remember him saying, "Not today, Bill, but someday." And in 2005, I think the someday arrived. In 2006, they started, the contract arrived in 2006, they began playing. Monday Night Football was obviously a huge win. But before that, they had been doing a lot of college baseball and football and everything else. So it wasn't a surprise to anyone, I don't think.
When you started, though, I mean, you were having a tough time. There was a whole lot of sports that maybe did not garner huge ratings and huge viewership, but you had to take what you could get in the beginning.
Oh yeah, did we ever? We even had a request for rights fee. What would we pay for New York rooftop platform tennis? I don't even know what that is. We turned that one down. Another guy came in and donated. He said, "I'm going to give you a bunch of pool tables if you'll just tell them there's guys playing pool, and then we'll take it to Las Vegas." And I can't even imagine the number of crazy things that people would think of. But it all worked out.
When you look back on your time with ESPN and becoming sort of the spokesperson emeritus as the first big cheese and big kahuna there, is there one memory that sticks out more than the others? Because you want to talk about a guy who is the epitome of a life well lived, who's had fun doing what he wants to do for his whole life. It's probably you, Bill. So it may be tough, but is there one sort of peak pinnacle moment for you in this whole thing?
I guess if I really think about it, it was September 7th, 1979 at about 6:50. We were going on the air at 7 o'clock, and we had, for months, we've been telling everybody we're going to be on the air September 7th, 1979 at 7 o'clock. We just figured we'd put a peg in the ground and that'd make everybody work for it. When we first hired Chet Simmons, he came to work July 31st, 1979. And the first thing he said was, "Well, we're canceling this getting on the air at 7 o'clock on September 7th because we're not going to do it." And I said, "Yes, we are. We have to do it because we had advertised in magazines and everything." And so when we came up to that moment at September 7th, 7 o'clock, and Lee Leonard was there, and he was the first guy seen, and those first words, that was the pinnacle. If you're a fan, what you'll see in the next minutes, hours, and days to follow may convince you've gone to sports heaven. Beyond that blue horizon is a limitless world of sports. And right now, you're standing on the edge of tomorrow. Sports, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from ESPN, the Total Sports Cable Network. That was a thrilling moment. As you can see, it's stuck. It's still in my brain.
I bet a little tear dribbled down your eye then. That's got to be a culmination of a dream. It
was indeed. And George Grand was on that first show along with Lee Leonard. And at the celebration of, I think it was either the 100,000th broadcast or the 50,000th, whatever it was, we all went back to Bristol, and George, we had talked about this, and we would talk through the years. But that night when he was back, and we recreated on the anniversary that very first sportscast, Sports Center. And he said, I can remember sitting in the studio looking through and seeing everybody in the control room. He said, "How did you guys feel?" There was no feeling. We were just so pleased. Everybody's so happy. nobody cheered, nobody jumped up and down or anything of the kind. But we all had our own thoughts, and that was a pretty special night. That was a very special time. Flipping the switch and get ready, world, here we come. That was a kind of a moment.
Boy, howdy, did you come. The book is ESPN, One Giant Leap for Fankind, a walk through sports history with the man who changed it, Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN. Thank you so much for being here today. We could do this again.
I hope we do. You know, you and I, we could start talking about, we could do it by seasons, by decades, by you pick the sport. We can do, you get a couple of radio guys talking, we could probably do a 24-hour thing.
Hey, there's an idea there somewhere, a 24-hour sports network. Wow, that'll never work.
No, it's not going to work. Burke, a delight to be with you today. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. What a fantastic conversation. Pick the book up now. ESPN, One Giant Leap for Fankind. Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN, our guest today. Thank you, Headline Books, for the Zoom into Books platform. Thank you to everyone listening to our Big Time Talker podcast. Wherever you are, wherever you go today, make it a great day. Thanks for being here. Bye, everybody.